I'm enjoying the comments, the 3 words or less comments. Chris, I have a belief that the hardest part of the year for school, probably for teachers and kids, is Valentine's Day until spring break.
I would agree. We haven't had a suspension in 2 months, and we had 2 today. So it was. The kids are ready, and obviously the teachers are too. So.
Yeah, and administrators. Don't forget administrators.
Yeah, exactly. No, at least it'll be a quiet. I'm taking off next week, but at least I do have a couple hours of office hours I'm going to put in because it's just me and the custodians here. Then I can actually get some of the paperwork done. So.
Yeah, and those times are always planned on, and then people stop in, and because they think you have time, then the 5-minute drop-ins end up being 45-minute conversations.
Yep. Yeah, and the custodians want to catch up on the latest off-season Packer moves. So. Well, I started the QuickTime video, Paul, so we're rolling. So this can, whenever we want to start.
Okay. Are we?
We got 2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, how was your testing for? Did you have to rearrange your schedule for the Badger exam?
Yeah, completely. We knocked out our entire schedule for 4 days and rebuilt a brand new schedule that was flexible for kids. We had built-in brain breaks and team building activities and all that. And then when the timings changed, we went back to a standard testing schedule we use for MAP. And we did a stress test on Monday, district-wide, 5th through 8th grade. We're 1-to-1. And our 5th and 6th graders aren't, but we went, had every 5th and 6th grader log on, and then all of our 7th and 8th graders, and to see what the network capabilities were, and it worked fine. So we had 8 glitches total, which is not bad. And I think they're more on our end, not setting things up correctly on our Chromebooks. So we're playing the test on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, and then just makeups after that.
Yeah, I know some schools were going to test, starting this week, and then because they didn't have the technology to stretch it out, or they had to stretch it out because they didn't have technology. So I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Mary, you might not need a mic tonight. You probably can just use chat. All right, Chris already answered it. All right. You got 5 o'clock, Chris?
I got 5. Should we get rolling?
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start tonight. I think we'll be fairly brief, and thanks for joining us. And Chris and I talked. We know this is a really busy time for everyone, so we just want to make sure we answer any questions that you have out there, and maybe we're going to talk about a few things that have been some recurring themes that we've seen in some of the work lately. And then if you have any questions or concerns, you can maybe bring them up and we can answer them as a group. And then Chris can add anything, and I think Chris is going to start with some educator effectiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, like Paul said, I think originally it has planned on the in the modules that we were going to look at the different approach models when talking with teachers, but we had a couple technical difficulties finding the videos that have been used in the past. So we thought it would be better just to check in, like Paul said, and we have a number of people that couldn't make the session tonight. So really want to troubleshoot for you moving forward. And I think one of the big things that Paul and I talked about is we've seen some information come up about educator effectiveness and what that, that's obviously changed the landscape of supervision and evaluation in the state. And we have something consistent district to district now that was not in place. Having taught this class at the beginning of this school year and seeing the differences between implementation of EE from the cohort of students I had, it was quite interesting. But I think from at least the group I'm supervising in this cohort, it sounds like there's some pretty sound practices out there. But some questions I know have arisen in chat boards I've seen, as well as assignments handed in, is what's the role of the principal beyond the actual supervision and evaluation? What does it take to get certified and move forward? So I'm going to speak from the Danielson framework approach with using Teachscape, and then I think Paul can speak to the strong model, as he's also has an extensive background in Danielson too. But it's nice that we both are in districts that are using the two different models. We can have two, hopefully, in-house experts, if you want to call us that, around that. But as far as the Danielson framework and using Teachscape, principals that are in districts that utilize that go through roughly a 40-hour online module that walks you through all of domain 2 and 3 and really teaches you about interpretation and bias versus actual gathering of evidence. And I'm sure you've all experienced that now that you've done your observations. You know, really sticking to what's happening in the classroom, what's quantifiable evidence, you know, using statements like 3 kids rose their hand rather than some kids rose their hand, because then that's open to interpretation. And when you're then scoring within domains 2 and 3, you really want that quantifiable data or evidence in order to make those sound judgments on the level of proficiency the teacher's at. So back to the part I first brought up, when we're looking at what that certification looks like I said, it's about a 40-hour, for the Danielson framework, 40-hour online do at your own pace module that takes you through multiple hours of observing teacher practice at the 4 various levels of basic or unsatisfactory, basic, proficient, and distinguished. And from there, you have skills checks to look at evidence as well as score videos. And from there, after you get through that epic journey of those 40 hours, and I think it's really beneficial. A lot of the work we're doing in this course really aligns with that training module. And you then take a series of 2 tests. You must score out of 100, at least I believe it's a 70 on the, or 68% on the first test. And then from there you have to score a composite 142 out of 200 in order to pass the Teachscape training and certification. They're very rigorous tests. The top end of time can take up to 6 hours. I think my 2 tests combined were about 4.5 hours. Took my time a little more on the first one than the second one, understanding the format. One of the downfalls is because it is so high stakes, there's not really any feedback that's given to you on whatever you score on the first one. It just gives you your score based on the 4 areas that you were tested. It doesn't give you feedback on what you need to improve on or look at. So once you get the test taking format down, you do much better. You have a series of matching questions, matching evidence statements to different components in domains 2 and 3, as well as looking at bias and unbiased statements and deciding if it is a biased statement or unbiased statement or evidence-based. And then you watch a series of up to 2 or 3 videos per test, and you look at a teacher in practice, similar to what you've done here in this class in week 6, and then you score the teacher based on domains 2 and 3. And then you sort evidence statements to align with the correct components. So it gives you a wide variety of competencies in order to be successful. But one of the things it doesn't do, and I think this course does a nice job of, is actually going into the classroom and doing the observation and living it and seeing it. I think a lot of your reflections that Paul and I have read, we've seen a lot of great takeaways of, you know, what to do when you're in the classroom and how do you manage gathering the evidence and what is that evidence, what should it quantify about evidence and what that should look like, as well as then that management. I know a couple people I've given some feedback to that, hey, you don't have to do it all when you're in the classroom, and nor should you. It's really about taking down those evidence statements, making sure you have high quality, high leverage evidence that can be used to support either quality teaching or areas of improvement. And then once you have those evidence statements down, you go back to your office or that night or whenever it might be, within a short turnaround time. And that's where you sort that evidence into the different components of the framework and give the appropriate score. And if Teachscape is utilized correctly within the Danielson framework, it should be a very efficient process and very transparent for teachers. And I know a lot of you are experiencing this as teachers, so hopefully you're learning the really good things that your principal's doing, as well as things that you would tweak and change as far as using it as coachable feedback and actionable feedback to your future teachers. So Paul, I don't know if that was a lot all at once, but I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that or talk from the strong framework as well.
Yeah, I went through the Danielson training, and exactly like Chris described, that one is a lot more rigorous, I think, than the strong. The strong model is there's a couple days, and then you have to go in and pass some video tests for calibration. I thought the strong was a lot easier, but it's also because I think I went through the whole Danielson. So a lot of the skills will transfer over and what you're looking for. And then it's just aligning it with the rubric. So the strong was not near as much work as the Danielson model was. And I think part of that is because I already went through the Danielson one. So had I flipped them and gone through the strong one first, maybe I would think a little bit different, but it seemed like the Danielson one was a little bit more rigorous with it. And again, and Chris just said this, but it's really hard to grade while you're in there looking what's going on. And I think a lot of times you go in there, just get whatever you can and then sort it out later. And the one thing also I would say is that it's really hard to see it all. And I think some of you are kind of realizing that now. I was amazed at the people that I graded, at the information they saw in the videos, if they actually didn't stop and watch those twice or paused them or whatever, because they were getting everything. And in a live classroom, that's really challenging to do. So if you're doing that well without stopping a video, that's really, really great work.
Yeah.
With it.
I think in order to get to Paul's point too, you're not going to get it all, but to get the most. And I learned this early on. You got to be moving in the classroom. Especially if you're in a classroom where the teacher's moving and there's a lot of small groups. I always had principals who sat in the back of the room, and that always bothered me as a teacher because they were only hearing what I said. They weren't hearing what the kids were saying. And when you look at those components in domains 2 and 3 and look at level 3 and level 4 attributes, it's really about what kids are doing and saying. And you can't really gather that strong, high leverage data unless you're right in the thick of things with kids and sitting at their tables or at their desks with them and listening to those conversations. So be active. I think teachers appreciate that too, when the observer's active and actively moving around and trying to get as much information as they can and get everything that's going on. But again, you've only got one set of eyes and one set of ears, so you're not going to be able to grab everything. But it's about finding those high leverage pieces of evidence. And then
just to piggyback on what Chris said, a lot of times if you can talk to kids, that's the best thing you can possibly do.
Yep.
And I don't interrupt lessons, but if there's work time or something going on or they're in small groups, I will ask kids, what are you learning? I'll ask them why. I'll ask them, how are you getting graded on this?
Mm-hmm.
Those simple 3 questions can tell you a lot. If students can tell me, well, we're learning this because, and some of them will connect it to a standard, or some of them will be like, well, we're learning this because it connects to yesterday. They'll give me a paragraph answer. It's like the teacher planned it. And then also, I don't rely on one kid. I will ask 3 or 4 students. So it's not like, well, you asked that one student, he didn't know. So if you get a chance to talk to kids, it's very, very helpful. I make sure I don't interfere with whatever's going on in the lesson, though, when we do that.
Totally. Yep.
All right. And then do you have anything else on educator effectiveness, Chris, or just want to talk?
No, I think I'm really liking that I'm seeing, and Paul, you're probably seeing the same, is connecting the learning that in coaching and everything that you want to do with your future teachers back to educator effectiveness. I don't know about Paul, but I know that here in Franklin, and we use educator effectiveness as the coat hanger, and everything else we do is hanging on that coat hanger. It's the backbone of our work, and if we can show teachers how a simple article that was thrown in their mailbox relates to Danielson 3C, and it's going to help them with their practice, or a conversation we have in PLC is really about domain 4 in professional practice, and we continue to tie back our work to educator effectiveness and SLOs. Everyone wants, I hear this all the time, there's so much on educators' plates today. Totally agree. But if you can make that plate show all the food connection on it, you're going to have a great meal rather than isolated foods that don't match and don't go together. It's not going to taste very good. And I think that's where we see stress and, burnout, because as leaders and instructional leaders, we need to make those connections so that teachers see that this isn't just another thing, but it's a connection back to educator effectiveness or whatever your coat hanger is.
We've had some good success this year because we've tied a lot of things to SLO. And actually, I visited Chris's school and saw some of things they were doing there, and it helped us out here at Templeton. So that was a really good thing for us to be able to tie the SLOs in what was going on in educator effectiveness. So that's been a good fit for us. Two other comments I just want to make quick that may be very helpful for you as observers. When you go into the classroom, Marzano, when he did his framework, the biggest thing, best thing I think he did is he said, when you walk into a classroom, teachers can be in basically one of three phases. Either it can be new learning, they can be practicing things that are going on, or they can be generating hypothesis. And depending on where they are in the unit, they're going to ask for different strategies. So for example, the video you watched yesterday, some people were really drilling the teacher about not asking deeper level questions. If it's the first time kids have seen it, or it's an introduction to a unit, then it's going to be really hard to have deeper level questions. Not that there shouldn't be any, but it's going to be challenging to have some. So when you walk into the room, try to get a good sense of, is this the beginning of a unit? Is it the first time they've ever seen these concepts, or have they been working on these with a while? And kind of use that to help you understand better what you should be seeing. So lecture at the beginning may be the best way and a really good way to do things, versus lecture at the end of a unit, probably not the best way to do some things. So when I started looking in that framework, it got easier for me to look to know what I was looking for, because it narrowed down what should be happening. And when I talked with teachers, they weren't frustrated with me saying, well, how am I supposed to ask a deep level question when it's the first day we saw it? So it actually got me some more credibility as an observer. And the second thing I just want to say is, I've heard people talking about being experts and knowing all the research, and it's great to be up on those things, but it's going to be impossible to be experts on all of the different areas. And for example, special ed for me and foreign or world language, I walk into the room, I don't even know what they're saying. And so you have to become really good at looking at processes and asking questions, and then being able to connect people with resources that can help them out. So don't feel that you have to be an expert in all the content area. I think you just have to be good at knowing what questions to ask, and then connecting people with other ones can help them. So those are just two key points I wanted to share that were very helpful for me when I was starting, and as I continue to grow in this process, and hopefully you can find some use out of those. Chris, anything from you?
I think that's it. Maybe we open it up to questions. It looks like we've muted everyone's mics so that they we don't get static. If you want to just type you have a question in the text box, we'll open your mic and you can ask away.
And the other thing is, you're thinking about questions too. I know some people always have some about the last assignments and how they're going to work and things like that. So feel free.
I think they just want to go out in the warm weather. So.
So do I.
Yeah.
No.
It looks like Alan. I'm going to open this up to you. Alan, you have the mic. You said something about Danielson as a former teacher.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, yeah, my question is more so because when I look at the Danielson framework, and I even looking at Strong's, I mean, I can make some connections because of reasoning purposes, but I find that, going through some of those frameworks in the classroom and trying to make those connections myself with what the teacher's doing is a bit of a challenge, because I didn't get the Danielson training that classroom teachers got.
So you're saying that,
my question, and that's why I asked.
Sure. So you're saying, are you saying you have not had Danielson training?
No, so I get it indirectly when I sit through staff meetings and I hear bits and pieces. But since I'm a psychologist, so we're not on the Danielson framework.
I see. So, and what is your role, Alan?
School psychologist.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that would be difficult. For instance, we have what we call system specialists in Franklin, and they're really our reading specialists, math specialists, and ITL specialists. And my tech coach, my ITL specialist, is fabulous at what he does. But part of the change in our comp model and his role was to is to be able to observe teachers for mini observations and deliver PD that's built around the Danielson framework using technology. So he had to go through the training to get a better understanding, because he had not been in the classroom in Franklin when we used the Danielson framework. So I could understand from your perspective. And yes, I as a teacher, I didn't really have the Danielson framework where I taught. They just kind of did old school checklist observations. But I think that could be a benefit for former teachers. So for yourself, that's why that training, whether it's the Strong model or Danielson, it would be beneficial, and obviously a necessity when it comes to your first principal role.
Cool.
Does that answer your question, Alan?
Well, yeah, it was more so of an opinion type of question because I mean, obviously, with you guys having a little bit more of an experience using it, kind of getting a better understanding of it, than seeing it from that administrative angle, I was just curious if you felt that maybe your experiences give you the advantage over someone like myself who, honestly, like I said, I really just get it indirectly, and I've sought more information, but I just really don't. It's not something that's specific to what I do.
Sure. You don't use it in
And-
practice every day.
Yeah, and I would say that kind of comes back to what I just said previously. You're not going to be I think it is a little bit easier if you're in the classroom, but at the same time, you're not going to be an expert in all those areas anyway. So that's why just try to be as first as you can with the framework, and then know who to go to in the building to be able to help support the teachers. By the biggest thing.
Right.
It's probably a little bit easier for a former teacher.
Appreciate it.
There looks like there's a couple questions about, let me see. Blake, I'm going to give you the mic. How's that sound? Blake, can you have the mic?
Okay, yes. My question was really just around the forms that need to go into that assignment. I had provided them as paper copies to my teacher. So I was wondering if I could just put them into my Google Docs and then have hyperlinks in my paper that would take you to those. Would that be acceptable?
For sure. That's more than acceptable.
Okay, great.
Mary, you have the mic as well. You had a question. Okay, Mary's mic isn't working, so she stated. You said if you thought you read that you could type these out, and if added anything during our conference, we would just change the font color. That would be I'm okay with that too. Paul, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm pretty. Just as long as you explain what's going on, I'm good.
Same here. Same.
Yeah, as long as it's easy and you, hey, this is the red is this or the blue font is this, just so I can understand what's going on. That would be. I'm good with anything.
Yeah. You guys are doing any other questions, but you guys are doing great work. We're seeing a lot of growth from week 1, and we have 1 week left. And last week was probably one of the harder weeks with nonstop assignments due. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, and again, I just commented. There's been some really, really good stuff going on. It's been really impressive. It's been enjoyable to see some of the things that you have. And the other thing I will just share, I heard this at a conference this year, and it always sticks with me. Don't underestimate the amount of adult learning that needs to happen when you do things in your building. And sometimes when you're at the front of an initiative, if it's a reading or you're steeped in it and you're doing a lot, and then when you go back to another teacher, that might be, the second or third subject that they're teaching. So you need to make sure that you can help them and support them as you do some things. So, and time is the greatest gift you can give anyone. And as I see some of the things that you are doing in the work, one thing I would ask you to highlight is how can you make it efficient for both yourself and your teachers, and try to find a way that you can still be effective and still be true to the process, but be as efficient as possible with it. But you've done some really, really good stuff. So keep it up.
Mark or Paul, we're seeing a couple comments here about the length of the observation video. Are we gonna stick stringent to the 7 to 10 minutes, and they would edit them, or are we okay with them being a little longer?
If they're a little bit longer, I think
Yeah, if you guys don't spend the time editing, it's more about the reflection of practice. So if you have a longer video, that's okay. We'll watch them and give you feedback on those.
Yeah. We're here for you.
Yeah.
We are student leaders.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you guys.
Yeah. This is a very rigorous course and in a very short amount of time. So if the editing's not what we're do as an objective of this course, it's more about your learning and growth. Any other questions this evening? Good question, Shayna. It's about balance. You figure it out. It's nice working with Paul too, because he's a text message away or a voicemail and email. So you figure it out.
And, yeah, I think the one thing is your family you have to be upfront with them. And if you say you're going to be home at 5 o'clock one time, then you're home at 5 o'clock. And she knows that the last couple nights I've been late, and it is what it is. So you just be upfront with everyone, and you know that sometimes you have to be home. And the people in my building, I try to support and say, if family comes first, then if you have to do something with your family, make sure you take care of it. So, yeah. But I have a very understanding wife. So
as do I. Or my oldest kid goes, oh, he's got that look on his face again. Leave him alone for a half hour. So good. Any other last questions? We want to be cognizant of your time. We appreciate the feedback you've shared tonight and questions, and hopefully feel a little ease going into this last week.
Okay. And again, if anything comes up, you have to just shoot an email or give a call, and I'll get back as soon as we can. I think Chris, I'm going to be gone during spring break, but I'll be checking emails. So if anything comes up, I'll make sure I check in a couple times. But my goal is to have most of anything turned in now to be done here.
I'll be around, so I'll be able to answer if Paul can't get to you because he'll be away. I'll try to answer for both of us. But keep up the good work, guys, and we'll see you at the end.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.